Transcripts can be adapted and used for lots of different purposes, not just reading along, but also you can use them for filling the blanks activities, have your students marking the intonation and the stress of what they're listening to help them identify attitudes and inference skills. Before starting listening activities, pre-teach vocabulary is very effective. It can help build confidence and activate the background knowledge of your students. Aiming for around 5 to 7 words per day is a good amount so that students can effectively learn those words, and improving vocabulary is going to help with all 4 of the English skills. Similarly, pre-teaching background content, background knowledge or context, that can help students then focus on the language that they're listening to rather than struggling with understanding concepts. And similar to what Luke mentioned, predicting content before they listen, especially with images, practicing for listening part 1, can really help students think about what they're going to be hearing and what to listen out for. Then while listening, although in the exam the recordings are only played once, while practicing, it's a good idea to play more than once, giving multiple tasks for the same audio track, so students can practice different sub-skills with one track. Practicing listening for the gist, the main idea, then practicing inference skills, and finally looking for specific details in the listening tracks. Finally, just some other advice after listening. It's a great idea to always try to incorporate some productive activities following on from listening. So perhaps, having them complete a role play with each other, practicing speaking and listening skills, or writing their own script can help improve comprehension as well. Start with small, short conversations to help build confidence before moving on to longer ones. And to help with those longer conversations, teaching note-taking strategies explicitly can help give students the tools they need to make notes while they listen to the longer listening activities in the exam, which will help them with their comprehension and choosing the correct answers. I think, Luke, we're going back to you.
Yep, thank you. So let's just briefly go over what the part 1 of the listening section consists of before looking at some examples of questions from this section. So these are just short conversations that are followed by one single question that needs to be answered. These conversations can take place in a variety of contexts and include a variety of speakers from different ages and backgrounds with varying relationships to each other. And there's no written text. So these are less demanding for test takers, and there is less interference from their reading abilities when we're trying to assess what they can do while listening. So you'll see a lot of conversations here that have employees at jobs, students, people in a lot of public contexts, all with different kinds of relationships to each other, having a lot of different conversations. So these questions can test global information, explicitly stated details, implicit information, and then to prepare for this task, you would want to help your students practice, being able to identify that type of information. So the type of activities that Emily just shared with you are all great for learning to listen for the gist or main idea, for specific information, for more detailed understanding of the information that you hear, and for that implicit information that is implied instead of explicitly stated. So the instructions, in case you need a refresher for this part, is to listen to the 25 short conversations in the section. And after each conversation, you will hear a question about it. And you will hear each conversation and question once. The answer choices are shown as pictures, and you mark your answers on a separate answer sheet, not in the test booklet. There's only 3 options, A, B, or C. So let's listen to an example of one of these, and we'll see if we can answer this question together then.
Oh no, I forgot the movie tickets. They must be on my desk at work still.
The show's going to start in 20 minutes. Can you go there and get back in time?
Well, I'll do my best. Taxi!
Okay, I'll just wait at the entrance for you. Hurry!
What will she probably do next?
All right, so hopefully you were able to hear the audio and follow along. Looks like we have some possible answers in the chat. Feel free to go ahead and answer if you think you know what it is. This is an example of a question that requires test takers to kind of predict what happens next. The information is not explicitly stated, so you have to kind of listen between the lines, so to speak. And I think a lot of people are saying the right answer in the chat. Fernando, would you like to unveil it? Yep. The answer is to take a taxi, and then after that, they would go to work, and then after that, to the movie theater. So taking a taxi is the very next thing that will happen. We'll listen to another example.
Let's welcome our new student, Michelle, to our cooking class. Can you tell us about your cooking experience?
Well, I used to make desserts for years, but now I've been experimenting with soups.
Well, today in class, we're going to make a delicious roasted chicken, so it'll be new for you.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to it.
What will they make in class?
And so feel free to answer in the chat if you think you know. This is an example where the answer is explicitly stated. It's directly stated. So if you hear that vocabulary and know that and you're listening for that detail, you're probably going to be able to tell that chicken is what they'll be making today. And then we have one more.
So, Matthew, please tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I used to work at a movie theater selling snacks and tickets, and now I'm working at a grocery store in the fruits and vegetables section.
Great. And do you have any experience selling clothing or shoes?
Not yet, but I'm very excited about this opportunity.
Where did he work first?
All right, again, a lot of information here with a lot of explicitly stated info that you have to follow along with and kind of identify the order of events. Fernando, would you like to unveil the answer for this one? And it's C. I see in the chat we have a lot of people choosing C, so you're all able to follow along, which is great. And I think that's our last example of this section before moving on to the second section of the listening part on ECCE. So this is a little more demanding for test takers. We're moving on to longer talks that are given by one person, and those talks are followed by 5 questions that have to be answered by test takers. These are live talks that would be happening like in real time, that you would be listening to a teacher talking to a class, someone at a job talking to employees, for example. They reflect a variety of situations that people in most countries could experience. And again, this tests the same type of information. It can be global, explicitly stated, or just implicit information. And you would want to do a similar type of practice activity to prepare students for these tasks as well. So all of the things that Emily mentioned before would help students practice to learn to listen for gist and specific info and implications as well. So normally you'd be hearing 4 short talks in this section, all followed by 5 questions. And each talk is played twice because it's a little bit longer than the previous section's talks. So we're going to listen to one example today. We'll listen to the entire talk, and then we'll look at the questions and try to answer them together. So we'll listen to that first talk right now.
Look at the questions. Listen to a news story on the radio.
Looking for something fun to do with your family and friends this summer? The Capitol Zoo is always a popular destination for locals and visitors alike. But heads up, the zoo is undergoing a major construction project that will affect several things about your visit if you're headed there. Construction is underway for a new marine life center, which will be massive. It's scheduled to open in the spring of next year. The main feature of the new center will be a seal arena, with daily shows featuring more than a dozen seals. The Marine Life Center will also have a special tropical fish exhibit. So, lots of exciting updates coming for our zoo, but in the meantime, zoo guests will have to put up with some changes during their visits. The African animals section has been reduced to half its normal size, so unfortunately, the giraffes, hippos, and elephants are not on exhibit currently. Our sister zoo in California is hosting those animals until construction is complete. Also, parking will be a bit more challenging when you go. 2 of the 5 lots are currently unavailable for use. That being said, the zoo administration is offering a lot of special deals for visitors this summer, including special discount days, a free shuttle from remote parking lots, and reduced prices on family memberships. You can read all about them at the zoo's website, www.capitalzoo.org.
What is the main attraction of the new Marine Life Center?
So if you were listening along to this one, it's stated pretty early. I see some people are choosing the correct answer already. It is the seal exhibit. That this is explicitly stated. If you can remember back, she explicitly says that this is the name of the exhibit that will be opening.
What does the speaker say about the African animals section?
So this one's a little tricky. But it looks like people are already answering the correct answer as well. And that is, it is reduced in size. Again, this is explicitly stated in the passage.
What does the speaker suggest about the current construction project?
This one, it takes a little bit of an inference to answer. If you think back to the passage, the speaker says that there are many things people will have to put up with, which kind of implies that it will have a negative effect on their visit, which is what the answer is in this case.
Why is the zoo offering so many special deals this summer?
And then again here, if you think back, it's not explicitly stated why they're offering these deals, but if you are listening to the passage and you think about how it might be difficult to visit due to the construction, and then the list of things that they're doing to get people to come, you might be able to infer that that is happening to encourage people to come despite the issues that the zoo is having. So in this case, the answer would be C as well.
Listen to a part of the talk again, then answer the question.
Construction is underway for a new Marine Life Center, which will be massive.
What does the speaker mean when she says,
which will be massive?
So this is an example of a question that's testing a very specific detail that relies on some vocabulary comprehension. A lot of people are choosing D, and that is correct. Massive, meaning it will be very big. And now we'll move on to the CE reading section. So aspects to consider when preparing students for this section, very similar to listening, you want to consider what should a person be able to do if they're at a B2 level of proficiency, specifically when we're relating to understanding global, local, and inferential skills when reading. So according to the CFER scale, B2 people in general should be able to understand the content and structure of a variety of texts that are written with different purposes and are about a wide range of topics. And those can include argumentative texts that are focused on contemporary problems. So we'll be looking at some examples today of various genres of text that focus on problems that people are dealing with in modern times. And then people should be able to understand a broad range of vocabulary, including colloquial language and more frequent idioms. Because there's some different genres in this section of the test, you'll see some more formal, some more informal language. There's a mix of things you'd want to prepare students to be able to recognize and understand. And then people can also synthesize and report information from a number of sources, which is very important to do, especially in the second part of the reading section, as we'll see today. So very similar to listening, when preparing students to answer multiple choice items, you'd want to encourage them to look at the questions before reading so they can kind of have a purpose when they're reading. They know what they're going to be looking for, what type of information they're going to have to comprehend and answer. And you really want to encourage your students to focus on understanding the main idea while also reading for the details to kind of support that main idea so they can better understand how everything is connected within the text that they're reading, which will help them to be able to answer the questions that they'll see.
Okay, thanks, Luke. Just like with the listening, I want to go over a few simple tips to improve students' reading comprehension. As with listening, it's really, really helpful to pre-teach vocabulary before starting the reading activity, which can help students focus on the reading skills rather than trying to understand the new words, and background knowledge as well. If you're reading about these contemporary issues, it can help to give your students a bit of background knowledge and understanding before going into the reading activities. As with listening, predicting the content, reading the questions first, or reading headings, looking at related images, can help your students to predict what they're going to be reading about, and give them some idea of what to be looking for. As Luke mentioned, there's a variety of text types featured on the exam, so it's a good idea to get your students used to reading a range of different text types, and specifically different text types on the same topic can be helpful for reading part 2 particularly, but it can help students to understand how attitude and opinions are expressed if they're reading about the same topic but written in a different way. Sort of linked to that, it can be very helpful to teach the concepts of audience, purpose, and form explicitly, so students know what sort of clues to be looking for to understand who a text has been written for, which can help aid their comprehension. As Luke mentioned, reading for detail, finding specific information, looking for the main idea, and then inferring information as well are all important skills for reading comprehension. Having multiple different tasks for one text, similar with listening, and lastly, have students complete a productive follow-on activity, for example, rewriting a text for a different audience or in a different style, can really help aid comprehension and, as a bonus, help improve their productive skills as well. So I'll pass back to Luke to look at some examples.
Great, thank you, Emily. I think you'll see today how those practice activities will really help to allow students to answer these types of questions that they'll see on this test. So looking at part 1 of the reading section, this consists of 2 reading passages, which are both followed by 6 questions. Again, they feature a variety of concrete and abstract topics from a variety of different domains. So these will be familiar to most test takers in general, but the details will be things they have to comprehend within the passage to be able to answer the questions. So again, we're testing global, local, and inferential information. And to prepare for this task, you want to do any sort of activity that prepares students to read for just specific info, detailed understanding, and implications. So let's take a look at an example from part 1 of the reading section. I'll read through it once, and then we'll just focus on where the answers are located for the following questions. So this passage is about a new sport. Trampoline, a flexible platform on which one jumps up and down, has long been a favorite among children. However, the trampoline is now being used in a new way as part of an extreme sport that may someday be practiced competitively. A wall trampoline, developed in the world of the circus, requires both courage and skill. It involves the athletes, called bouncers, throwing themselves off a wall onto a trampoline about 5 meters below. They then bounce off the trampoline and back to the top of the wall, and they're flying through the air. They perform jumps, loops, and other tricks in much the same way as freestyle skiers and skateboarders. According to the developers of wall trampoline, it is more impressive than traditional trampoline because the participants do not need to do many small bounces in order to gain the height needed to perform tricks. The bouncers start from a high place, so they can fly higher from the first jump. However, the presence of the wall can make it dangerous. The bouncers always have to be very aware of where they are in relation to the wall to avoid hitting it by accident. Inventing a new extreme sport is not completely straightforward. The rules, or lack of them, must be considered. Fans of wall trampoline enjoy the fact that it is a freestyle activity, but if bouncers want to compete against each other, a formal method to judge their moves is needed. So the first question, as we can see here, is what is the main purpose of this passage? So you really need to understand the entirety of the passage to be able to understand it, to answer it, I mean. I see you already have some people answering, and I'm seeing the correct answer already. It is D, to describe a sport which few people know. You can see in the first paragraph that it is referred to as a new type of sport. It is a new way And in the last paragraph, it says that inventing a new extreme sport is not straightforward, implying that it's a brand new sport that may be unfamiliar to people. Our second question, in what way is the circus related to the topic of the passage? You can find the answer to this in the second paragraph if you haven't spotted it yet. It says wall trampoline developed in the world of the circus. So you can see it is explicitly stated there that it is B, it is where the sport came from here. Our next question, according to the passage, what do those performing wall trampoline need to be careful about? So the answer to this question is located in the third paragraph, where they are talking about the wall. So the bouncers start from a high place, they can fly higher from the jump. However, the presence of the wall can make it dangerous. So again, pretty explicitly stated, the location of the wall, the presence of the wall is what might pose a problem for some people. And then in this question, what does the author say about wall trampoline in the last paragraph? So often the test questions will instruct test takers where to look to find the answer. So we can see in the very final paragraph here, it said that it is not straightforward to invent a new extreme sport and that the rules or the lack of them must be considered. So in this case, I see some people are already choosing the correct answer. It is A. The standards are necessary for comparing performances. It's not something that's been invented yet, so it needs to be standardized and able to judge these athletes. Okay.
Quick question. Look, in relation to the different types of questions about a specific passage like this one, what is the variety? We have a variety of different purposes for these items, for these questions. How are they selected? Can you give us an overview of how many in general for main idea? Is there a pattern for that, or how are the different questions selected for each passage?
Sure, that's an excellent question. We can't give the exact specifications and details, but we do ensure that there is a variety of questions that test explicitly stated information, global main idea information, and implied information as well. So you will always see questions that address all of those different areas and that require all of those skills to be able to answer them. So you will definitely see those in every passage you read. And you probably notice that a lot of the questions do kind of appear in the same order that the information appears in the stimulus itself. So it's not trying to trick test takers in any way or make it more confusing for them. They should be able to follow along and answer those questions in order.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's move on to part 2 then. These are thematically related passages that are all tied together because they all share a common theme and a common type of information that will run through them. So we'll see how that happens in practice with the example we're looking at today. But these are always followed by 12 questions. So there's a lot of reading and a lot of information to kind of comprehend and digest when going through these. Again, they can focus on a variety of concrete and abstract topics from a variety of different domains. They should be familiar to most test takers. We'll be seeing emails, flyers, magazine articles, things like that. Yeah, because different genres are represented, there's a large variety of rhetorical styles within these texts. And as you probably have realized, and you'll see today, the passages will increase in length and difficulty as you advance from section A to section D. So once again, we're testing the same types of skills, generally speaking, global, local, inferential information. And to prepare for the task, you want to be able to do all of those things, to read for gist, read for that specific information, for detailed understanding and implications as well. So let's look at an example of this then. We'll be looking at these 4 sections today. They're all tied into kind of exercise and physical activity while pulling in some other types of information and domains as well. So we'll look at each section one at a time, and we'll start with section A. The title here is Play Ball with Girard Manufacturing Incorporated. It's a short section, so I'll read through it real quick. If you'd like the chance to have fun with your coworkers while staying fit, look no further than the office baseball team. If you want to participate in our company baseball team, join us for tryouts, which will take place at Field Park this Thursday, the 7th at 6 p.m. Players with all levels of experience or none at all are welcome. Games will be held on Saturdays throughout the season with optional practice sessions each Thursday after work. And people are already identifying the correct answer in the chat. Excellent job, everyone. Who is this announcement written for? It is the employees at this company, Gerard Manufacturing. This is kind of a main idea question where you have to read through the entire passage to understand and pull all the details together to understand who it is written for, which in this case is a specific set of employees at a company. Second question, this is an example of a detail question with explicitly stated info appearing in the passage. What will be happening Thursday the 7th? If you look in the second paragraph, you can see the answer. If you want to participate in our company baseball team, join us for tryouts, which will take place at Field Park this Thursday the 7th at 6 p.m. So I would see, again, a lot of people are choosing B. Tryouts for a baseball team is the correct answer. So then we'll move on to section B. You'll see that it's a little bit longer than section A, which was about baseball and physical activity in the workplace. So here we're moving on to a related topic, which is about sitting and standing and the results of that while working. So I'll read through it real quick here. No gym required is the title. Many people with office jobs struggle to find the time and opportunity for regular exercise. But if you spend most of your day in a chair, it's even more important to maintain a healthy level of activity. Here are a few easy ways to boost your fitness. And I think just from that alone, you can tell what is the main purpose of the passage, and that is to encourage physical activity, which I see many people are already choosing in the chat. So that would be the correct answer here. It's then followed by various examples of ways that you can, have more physical activity. So park far away from the door, take the stairs, stand up for at least a few minutes every hour. All ways you could be doing more movement at work. And then moving on to section D, as you can see, compared to sections A and B, this is much longer. It's much more detailed and has a lot more information to digest. So I'll read through this one so we can all follow along together. Maximum effort for maximum benefits. The importance of regular exercise is stressed by doctors, scientists, and the media. The typical message is that we aren't exercising enough, and many of us aren't. But is there such a thing as too much exercise? Can exercise ever be harmful? As it turns out, the saying all things in moderation does apply to exercise. Several studies have shown that athletes who regularly compete at high levels, like marathon runners or long-distance bikers, are more at risk for certain health problems, particularly heart issues, and may not live as long as people who exercise at less vigorous levels. There's no consensus on exactly how much is too much. Many scientists agree that it depends on the person, but sticking to the general guidelines of 150 minutes of moderate activity each week is a good bet. The health benefits of that amount of exercise are well established by science. You may need to exercise more if weight loss is your goal, but it may be best to lead extreme endurance events like marathons to once a year at most. In other words, it's best to exercise every day, but there's no need to do so for longer than an hour each day. So the first question that we have here in this passage, what is the phrase all things in moderation used in relation to? If you look in the second paragraph, you'll see that phrase. As it turns out, the saying all things in moderation does apply to exercise. So I see a lot of people have chosen the correct answer again. Physical activity would be the answer here. Exercise being the synonym in this case that is used in the passage. And then we'll move on to what is the main conclusion of the passage. So because it's asking about the conclusion, you can probably assume it's going to be found. The answer will be found at the very end of the passage. And you'll see that it says, in other words, it's best to exercise every day, but there's no need to do so for longer than an hour each day, which implies that, exercising too much could be harmful if you do it more than the recommended amount. So in this case, A is our answer. And then in part 2 of the ECCE exam, there are always questions that require test takers to comprehend, multiple sections and synthesize the information from those sections together in order to answer the question. So this is an example of one of those types of questions. What do sections A and B have in common? In this case, you have to kind of understand who are these passages written for, and how do those two audiences kind of relate to each other. So they mention the same location. They're not really mentioning or talking about the same type of thing or the same exact audience. So the same location is not mentioned. They don't really reach a similar conclusion because one purpose of one passage is different than the other purpose. One is to advertise tryouts. One is to give advice about how to get more movement at work. They are directed at a similar audience. This one looks promising. A is written for employees at a company. B is for just employees in general, how they can get more movement. So in this case, C is our answer. They're directed at similar types of audiences or employees at a workplace. And then finally, we have which sections refer to outside research. So this will be a little tough to answer because we didn't get to look at section C in detail, and the text might be very small on your screen, so you may not be able to read it. But if you can, if you remember section D, mention different studies and what those studies could tell us. And if you can look at section C, you can see that external studies are also mentioned as well, I believe. Let's take a look at the answer here and see what it is. I'm having a little trouble seeing the text as well, but I do believe it says that external studies are mentioned in C as well. So you can see that outside research is mentioned in both of those texts, and A and B, it is not mentioned at all.
Yeah, the last paragraph in section C says, one study showed that walking lowered the risk of heart disease even more than running.
Perfect. Thank you, Fernando. Yep. So you can see that those are the two sections I both mentioned outside research in this case.
So some information about your test takers. We invited test takers to join us for a separate session later after this one. We'll see how that one goes, covering kind of the same content in some way, but explained at their level and helping them become more aware of what they can do to do well on the listening and reading sections of the test. But it was interesting to see some information from them, and I hope this is interesting to you as well. And you can tell us whether they told us the truth or they're lying about their background or their intentions or their expectations. But it seems that the majority of these prospective ECCE test takers, most of them might be your students, I'm sure. If you're here, you're interested in this webinar and you invited them to join as well. But the majority have been 63%, have been studying English between 4 to 6 years, 26%, 7 to 10 years. So they've been spending quite a number of years on their English studies so far. How long have they been preparing for the ECCE? 49%, 4 to 6 months. I don't know. Obviously, this is a kind of vague question. Everybody might understand it in different ways. Some might think that they've been working on this for much longer in terms of different courses that eventually led to the preparation for the ECCE. But in particular, how they interpreted it, it's like 50%, almost 4 to 6 months, 29%, 7 to 12 months. So the great majority will spend almost a year, or like within a semester or a full year, preparing for this exam. This is no news to you. Of course, there are many programs that are dedicated, like students are taking courses in particular to prepare for the ECCE, and they spend some time to make sure that they succeed. When are they planning to take the ECCE? The great majority that are interested in this at this point are taking it this May. So we hope that this webinar will help them to do better with these two sections. This is an interesting question as well, and I compared the responses from teachers and from test takers in terms of why are they taking ECCE? What is it? How is it helping them in some way, or what are the main reasons other than my teacher told me to take this exam or my parents want me to take an exam? But I thought that there was a lot of interesting information, and we categorized all the reasons because these were open questions, but mainly one of the top priorities for test takers was to meet institutional, academic, or graduation requirements. Many programs, English studies, or at certain levels, they are expected to reach a certain level of proficiency, and they need to finish with this certificate in particular, like certifying their English communication skills with a formal standardized test of English proficiency. And it was interesting to see that like 30% of the students thought that this was the main reason why they were taking this. Kind of, they had to. It's not something that they choose in that case. They have to meet the program's requirements or the graduation requirements to finish a certain program. But kind of 20% of the teachers thought that it was something that was more for test, a requirement for them to take it. What I really like this, one of the top reasons was 20, almost 30%, 20 something percent of the test takers thought that ECCE will help them to get a job or to improve employment. So it's seeing beyond the language course and what they are doing in class. They are seeing how this can be a useful tool to help them with the rest of their life and their career, their future. Kind of almost 25% of teachers thought so as well. For personal reasons, there were a good variety of test takers who also thought that they wanted to, and they expressed this in different ways, to meet university or admission requirements if they're interested in going to another university or studying in another country. But those are the two. There are many more teachers that think that this is what test takers are going to do. It seems that test takers are not planning to use ECCE to go somewhere else or to apply to a university. And the last one was scholarships. But this was interesting information, and I hope it matches. You can tell us if it kind of reflects what you know about your students, or if it's something very different from what they do. There were slight differences between the perceptions of test takers and teachers, but still, tell us in the chat if this is kind of what reflects what you know about your students in general. And have another poll to see, how do you think test takers are practicing English? Well, do you think that your test takers practice English outside the class first? Do they do anything on their own beyond what you tell them to do for homework? So let's launch a poll to ask you what you think. What are the main things that your students do to practice English outside of a class? And all these options came from their responses, I have to tell you. So somebody's doing, at least one student or one test taker suggested some of these. Obviously, movies, TV, videos, those are like, everybody does that. But this was very interesting. I was kind of glad to see what they're doing. Okay. Let's give you a couple of seconds to finish this. Okay, let's finish the poll here and share the results. So the majority of you think that they watch movies, TV, videos, audios. Yes, that is definitely the case. Studying, playing video games. Well, those should have been two separate. I guess you refer more to the playing video games than the studying part. But yeah, that's part of it as well. Some, like 5% of this audience thinks that they don't practice outside the class, which might be the case. Okay, and this is what they said, and you can tell us whether you agree with this or not. But the great majority said that they watch movies or watch TV or watch TV shows or watch videos, things online, YouTube, and the majority of those are in English to count for those purposes. But I was glad to really see that what is it, 25%, 26% thought that they were talking to friends, talking to relatives. I love talking to my cousin from the US, or there were lots of comments about with my friends, and we spent some time talking in English sometimes. There were lots of encouraging comments from them that they do lots of things on their own without anybody telling them to do that. Listening to music, singing in English, looking at the lyrics, and listening to songs in general in English. That's obviously something that has been popular for a while. It was encouraging also to see that almost 20% of them were saying that they were reading in English, and a variety of different things. And they mentioned very specific important authors and pieces, but just the idea that they are reading and engaging with English in that sense, I thought in many of the webinars we're doing with teachers, one of the main questions teachers have is how to encourage students to read. They lost their interest in reading in some way. Like traveling, they practice English when they're meeting foreigners and on the street, or when they go to other countries. What was it? I think 8% said that they don't practice anything outside of the class at all. Maybe that's kind of a little too low, and they can be a little more honest in some cases, but some of them did say that they didn't practice anything. Chatting online and studying, and the last one, 3% said that they were practicing English when they're playing video game. But chatting online, also on social media or other people that they know only from their kind of social media interactions on their platforms. That was an interesting way of exchanging information in another language, and more authentic purpose to use English for different purpose. So I thought it was an interesting piece of information to share with you, and to see. You can tell us if you think this is true, if this reflects. At least it gives me hope that they will be interested in doing a lot more outside of the classroom without anybody telling them, and they're not necessarily telling us that they are doing all this. But I was really glad to see this. And what I really enjoyed was seeing some of the comments that they made. One of the questions that we asked them was related to the personal goals that they think ECCE would help them to accomplish. I thought it was important to find the connection between they're taking an exam, but it's not just for the exam in itself. They have to see something that motivates them, or some connection with their real life, or their actual interests in terms of studying or doing something in their life later on, working, applying for scholarships. But many of the comments really surprised me, and I was kind of fascinated to read. I just printed a few of those here. What goals will ECCE help you to accomplish? A dream job abroad. I know that test takers are very young, but they're thinking about their dream jobs and having a better future, better work skills, giving me the courage to continue a higher education in English. This is a powerful statement from these young test takers that are planning their lives at this point. Get a scholarship, or will get to travel abroad. These seem to be kind of a more usual types of expectations in general, really nice. But look at the other ones on the other column. It will be a useful skill in the future, and I will become more confident in English. I will feel proud of myself after so many years studying English. Make proud myself and my parents, and show them that I really know English. Well, you can see that the test taker wrote that. I didn't write it myself. To believe more in myself, and to have the ability to communicate in English with foreign people, and the opportunity to find a job. So these were very powerful statements, and they're very aware of what they are, who they are, what they need in some way, and all that, those aspects about self-confidence and being proud of themselves, making their parents proud, and showing everybody what they have accomplished. This is so important. I thought it would be important for you to know about this, so you can also contribute to helping them to develop that confidence. It's more than just in your relationship with students and the little time that you spend with them, how we can help them build those other skills and make the connections with the real life, and how they might be paying more attention than you think sometimes. When I was teaching, I kind of seemed to lose faith at some point in what we can actually expect them to do, in what they believe in themselves, and how they're really using what they think they're going to be doing when they finish the courses. This was really surprising, and I was really glad to see those comments and that self-awareness about their role, and what something like this, a very specific exam that has a huge impact on their lives, their families, but how aware they are of the tools that they're developing, the skills that they're developing in this case, in order to do something else in their lives with themselves. So this was something that I wanted to share with you, and I hope it can help you also to help test takers. So we're finishing the webinar now, and both Luke and Emily, thanks for sharing all these ideas, kind of a big overview of listening and reading sections of the ECCE, practice activities, suggestions about what we can do to help students in class, preparing for those particular skills and sub-skills, but also based on those responses from test takers, maybe there's a lot more we can also do in terms of beyond just the listening and reading comprehension practice that we give them and encourage them to do. And remember to do your homework and finish this quiz and do this. And is there anything beyond obviously we're going to keep helping them to develop listening and reading comprehension skills and the sub-skills and the different types of questions, and preparing them to become more familiar with the format of the different sections, the timing, the type of how the questions are worded, how to look for the information in the text. But are there ways to give them opportunities to do more practice in class, and especially how do we motivate them to continue their English learning journey outside of the class, and encouraging, giving them ideas, encouraging them to practice all skills in more authentic contexts. Many of them were saying that they watch movies and TV, but if they're only listening without actually speaking or practicing more productive skills on their own for real purposes, not what they're doing in class, they might need more powerful motivators in order to encourage them they might be more kind of shyer in terms of communicating with other people outside the class, and if they don't have to do that, but the ones that are more interested in really expressing themselves, so that they do and talk to many people and they don't mind about making mistakes or anything. So providing them that kind of encouragement and giving them opportunities or suggestions about what they can do outside the class that really kind of makes sense to them, something that clicks, something that kind of is something that they really enjoy, might be important as well. More activities, obviously, to become familiar with the format of a test and the time practice, but the aspects about boosting their self-confidence and those comments about feeling good about themselves and their accomplishment and how their success helps everybody else around them, their families, their friends. I thought that was a very interesting angle to take from their side. It's like and learn from the test takers in a way, in order for us to help them prepare better for their future. So this is the last slide. We really appreciate your staying with us during this hour. We'll be meeting with some of your students later after this session. So we really appreciate your comments, your participation through the chat, your poll responses, and we'll be posting the recording later on, so you will have access to this one through our YouTube channel. So all the best wishes. Hope you enjoy the rest of the weekend. And until we meet again, have a great day. Thank you so much.